Ciao, jewelry makers. I'm Joey Balistreri, and I am thrilled to share with you what is on my beading mat today. So, I love to wear minimalist style jewelry, and it's very easy, very simple, and elegant. And I have been designing some pieces that fall into that style category, and this is a design that I particularly love. Now, I have created this one for a friend, and I did it in advance just to make sure that I was happy with everything before I shared it with you. So I will quickly show you what went into this sample piece that I've made. I started with the Beaded satin gold 7-strand beading wire. I cut 2 lengths of it and crimped the ends. And then this is centered around these barrel beads that were in one of our past bargain bead box subscription boxes. There are faceted barrel beads. That is all the information I have on them, but I wouldn't think this would be too difficult to find a barrel bead if you really love this. And then I had some, let's see, I keep my little information here. I had some crystal faceted rondelle beads that are half black and half gold in a 4 millimeter. And then I also had some larger ones that I hadn't saved the information on. So I combined the smaller and the larger 4 and 6 millimeter to create the pattern on this. And then I decided on my end pieces to use again some of those barrel beads and some crystal rondelle spacers and some of those bling ball beads that I had in my stash, and I just love the way it turned out. I also used some 8/0 gold metallic seed beads to give this a little bit more sparkle and a little bit more of a dainty chain look. And then from that same bead box, bargain bead box subscription box, they had included in that particular one these black charms that have a gold rim and a loop to hang them from something. And you look at that and think earrings. And I had taken them out thinking that I might use them as the dangle on the end of my sample piece. In the end, I decided against it, but I just wanted to show you that sometimes things that look like a dangle and there's a pair and it seems to be screaming earrings, think outside the box and maybe do something a little different, like the ends of a necklace. So this is the piece that I have already made, and I just adore this design. So if you can sort of see what has been done here, we're floating these beads in between 2 lengths of beaded beads. Oh! I am so sorry for the interruption, you guys. My little cat was sitting on the windowsill where my work table is. It overlooks my bird feeder and a beautiful fountain, and there's a lot of nature. And she is always near me where you don't see her on the floor or on the chair or on this windowsill. And something just flew by the window and she went crazy and she fell off the windowsill into a basket of stringing material that I have on the floor, and it scared me and it was noisy. Anyway, it was really fun. I thought, oh, I have to cut that out of the video, but I thought you guys might get a laugh out of it. So anyway, I am sorry for the interruption. Back to our necklace project. So I just adore the way these barrel beads are appearing to be floating between these 2 strands of chain that I've created. And this is really a simple stringing project. Really fun, really relaxing, comes together quickly. I would definitely classify this as a beginner friendly project. And you can do anything that you want to do with pretty much any beads that you have to work with, because you're just creating a pattern that repeats on both sides and choosing 3 or 5 or even more focal beads. And it's a great way to use beads that are special, that you really want to showcase. But also, I have to say that what sparked this design for me is that I like smaller beads. I like to wear smaller jewelry. I don't enjoy heavy, chunky jewelry for me personally. I love to make it. I love to make layered necklaces and multi-strand necklaces and bracelets, but most of the time that is not what I reach for personally to wear. So I was looking at my beads and some of the 10 millimeter beads and 12 millimeter beads and some of the beautiful lampwork beads and crystals. They're wonderful, but if you string all of those on a necklace, they can be quite heavy and they're chunky, and it's just not my style. So I was looking at some of the larger beads that I have in my stash, and I thought, how can I use these and showcase them without making a heavy piece that is too bulky for me? So this is what I came up with, and I'm really happy with it. So this piece is going to go to a friend, but we are going to make a piece together. So I will set our little sample here so we can look at it while we're working. And let me show you what I started with. So on the project we're going to make, I chose a color scheme of purple and copper. That is so elegant together and really one of my favorite color combinations. So I chose this Metallics Soft Flex stringing wire in the copper color, and it's a medium 49 strand wire. Now with a 49 strand wire, you get a really nice malleability. You can literally tie knots with this. You can macrame with this. You can do so much with it. It's bead stringing wire, but it's almost like string. So it's wonderful. It's really probably my favorite of all the bead stringing wires that Soft Flex makes. I like the Beadalon ones too, but I think the Soft Flex is really my favorite. So I have already started one side of the necklace because, you know, it's not fun to watch someone just pick up tiny bead after tiny bead and string it. It's like watching grass grow. So I started the pattern, and I will tell you what it is. I'll talk to you about what I've created because we're going to duplicate it on the other side and make some components that will get strung in along with the other side. So that bit of this design is started, and you can see what I was talking about with the purple and copper. So what I am working with here are these tiny, beautiful beads. This design that I am making is check glass full. It is packed with beautiful check glass. So this small bead is from Beadbox Bargain's website, and that is not it. Oh, you know, I think this is the one bead that I did not have the information on, but it is from Beadbox Bargains, and it is a pressed check glass. So the other thing that I am working with are these lampwork beads, and I'll go through quickly the components. I have made one of my drops already, but I had a little selection of lampwork beads. I have already started this one. One of my beads is getting away from me. I had already started this one, but I have these copper metal crystal rondelle spacers and some check glass oval beads, and I had a collection of 4 lampwork beads that were in purple and copper, with the copper glass swirling through it, and I just love them and wanted to keep them all together because they make a statement that way. So I've already done one of my drops. We're going to do this one together. I'll show you again how I wire wrap loops. And then the bead caps that you are seeing in these two are from the hoarding of the tiara cast, and I only had 2. So I did a design where one is facing down, one is facing up, and I think they'll make a statement together. I decided to use them in this piece because I am making this necklace for myself. So those drops are ready for us to work with. I am not exactly sure how I'm going to finish off the ends on this piece here. I used more of those barrel beads and then added in some sparkling gold beads to brighten up and liven up the black beads. On this one, I am still debating whether to use these beautiful 20 millimeter check fire polished glass faceted drop beads, and they are in a lavender. I have had these in my supplies for a really long time, and these also are from the Beadbox Bargains website. It was $1.59 for these 2 beads. So I have been debating about those. going on the end as my final drop on my design. But my other option is I had from the Orlando Bead Show, I had picked up a couple of these bronze chain tassels, and they were only $1 a piece, and they are easy to make. But I am still debating if I want to hang a tassel from the end of this necklace. You know, I want it to be a minimalist style, and but the more that you add to it, the less minimalist it becomes. So I haven't decided on that, but I thought I would show you because I am still thinking about the rest of the design. And then in my pattern, along with these small check glass purple beads, I also had some 11O very bright. I am not sure if these are bright copper or rose gold, but they add a beautiful pop of shine in between the purple. So I have been using those in the pattern. And also I have been using these, let's see, I'm trying to read my label. These beads are 4 millimeter check pressed glass Druck round beads in a lilac bronze luster. And then I also had these bronze check glass beads that are quite small with that I had not labeled, so they are also in the design. So you can have a look at the pattern. I'm working in segments of 6 and then separating those segments of 6 with a bronze bead and then going back to that check glass round and then a check glass bronze, and I just continued all the way like that to make a delicate, mostly a solid color, but I have alternated beads and added a little bit of shine in between. So I was really happy. It's really pretty, and it's what I wanted for myself to wear. So also I have created these components, and we're going to do the last one together. But this is also a check glass collection that I had purchased at Michael's. They came with 3 or 4, it was like an assorted bead mix, but I picked out 6 of the ones that were exactly alike, and again took that bronze, not bronze, copper crystal rondelle spacer. So instead of one bead like I did on our sample with the barrel, I have made a tiny little component that will be our focal point on the one we're going to do together. So there are those. And then the final thing is I also have not decided on a clasp. So I went into my supplies and I found this also from Beadbox Bargain's website. It's a magnetic clasp with a little sparkle. It's in the copper color. It has a little bit of a black wash over it, but I bought these just for my supplies, and I like the idea of a magnetic clasp. It's really lovely. It's the right size. I don't know if that's what I'll use. And then I also had just a very simple toggle clasp in an antiqued copper in my supplies. And I may end up doing that because, again, I'm trying to keep this as a minimalist necklace, very chic and lovely, and not make it too busy. So as we go along, I'll make those design decisions. And then you will need the number 2 crimp tubes. I love the ones from Soft Flex, but today I'm using these from Beadalon. And let's see, I did the magical crimping tool on this. If I don't know if you can see, let me put that down. Oh, I also have some 6 millimeter copper jump rings in here. So those are all the supplies we will need, and of course our tools. But let me show you on the segment that I started. At the very end, these are copper, I think 80 seed beads. These here, but this tiny little bead is the crimp tube. And the magical crimping pliers actually turn that number 2 crimp tube into a tiny round bead that does not require a bead cap. You don't see the fold over taco shape of the normal way of crimping. So I'm going to show you how to do this today. There's a little bit of a learning curve with the magical crimping pliers, but once you get it, you will love it. It's beautiful. It just makes a really beautiful, simple piece. And then you can see that copper bead stringing wire really matches everything well, so it's unobtrusive. And when we add our other things to this, it's going to make the beautiful transition from the strand of beads into our ends. So let's get started on this one. We are going to repeat. This is going to be the top of the design. So when I started out, I crimped, made my loop, did my crimp, and then started with 3 of these check glass beads from Bead Treasures, 80 seed beads. And this is funny, they're in the color, it's called bronze, but for my eye, it is copper, and it matches my other copper things really beautifully. And so, as I said, this design is laden with check glass of all shapes and sizes. So we're going to use some of these. I'm just going to put a few out on my mat. And I've shown you everything else. I buried my other piece of wire. So for those of you that want to know the measurements that I am using, I did 2 pieces of this bead stringing wire that are around 28 inches each. Now, I wanted my necklace to be a bit longer than my sample piece that I made, but that is adjustable. You can make this a shorter design, as I said in the beginning, or you can make it a longer necklace like I'm going to do. But the only thing to know is that whatever length you decide on of your bead stringing wire is you need 2 the same length if you want them to be the same length. So that's the other possibility in this. I did these the same length, but if you wanted to have one a bit longer and one a bit shorter to have an asymmetrical staggered look, then these don't need to be the same length, but I'm doing mine the same today. And then when I'm finished stringing, if I want to shorten one end, then I will have that option. So this piece is the exact same length as the piece that I've already started. So the first thing I'm going to do is take one of these copper number 2 crimp tubes. I only need one. I'm going to put everything back in my little salt cellar so I don't lose it. So I'm just going to string that on and loop it and go back through the tube. And then I would like to try to get my loop on this end to be as close as possible to the loop on the other end. So I like to use my pliers to do that. I feel like I have more control and I can see things. So I'm just going to try to match it. You know, these are crimping pliers. I'm not going to use these to crimp, but I do really like, because they have such a small tip. These are the ones from Xuron, and they just have such a nice small tip. I keep them handy, and I tend to use them for things like this. But today, I am going to show you guys how to use the magical crimping pliers. So these have, instead of all of the channels, like a regular crimping plier, these have only one channel. It's like a small well, and it's the same on top to bottom. So it becomes like a mold for this crimp tube. So I've got my wires uncrossed. I've got my crimp tube exactly where I want it to be on the wire, and I am going to rest that crimp tube in the well, and I want to get it in as close to the very middle. You can sort of see and sort of even feel when it's in its proper position. I'm trying to turn it both sides so you can see where I have it. But I can feel that it's right centered in that little well. And once I feel that it's in there in the right place, I am going to press down as hard as I can. And when I remove this, you'll see we made a ravioli. It's a tiny ravioli, and you can see that all 4 corners are pinched on that crimp tube. And so now we're just going to turn it the opposite direction and fit it right back into that little well. And you know, for me, when I started doing this, I was trying to go too fast, and I have learned that if I slow down and make sure that that is in the center of that well, then I do this really easily. There was a bit of a learning curve. I practiced and wasted a few crimp tubes, but now that I have it, it's really fun and really beautiful. So now we've put pressure on it in the opposite direction, and I am just going to leave it in that well and go around and around until I don't feel any resistance, until I feel that it fits in that well, or it's a circle shape. It reminds me of a cake mold, a tiny little circle cake mold. So when I take that crimping plier away, look at the beautiful, perfect bead that we have at the end. And that is really secure. It's not going anywhere. So I really love these crimping tools. The thing with the magical crimpers is you really have to have either the Soft Flex #2 crimp tubes, the Beadalon #2 crimp tubes work as well too. They have a much thicker wall. If you buy cheap crimp tubes and if you try smaller ones or larger ones, you won't get this beautiful bead. So if you're going to try those, don't waste crimp tubes. That's what you need. So on this end that I've already done, I started with 3 of these copper colored seed beads. I had to, on the other end, I had to cut my tail. I like to keep a little bit of the tail if it will fit, and it did on this side. So I started with those, and then my pattern is, let me dump out a few of these. It's easier to work with them on the mat. So my pattern is in groups of 6s. So I am just going to string 6 of these on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are very small, but it's so pretty when it's done. And then I'm going to move to these. Some of these rose gold. I think these are rose gold. It might be a bright copper. But then I did one of those and then one of these little Druck check glass round beads, and then another small 11O seed bead. And I don't think I'll be able to get that wire back through the seed bead. So I will trim that in a bit. But then I'm going to continue just repeating this same pattern, another 6 of those smaller beads, the copper check glass bead, and I'm going to string this exactly as I did the other side, and then I will be back. Okay, I'm back. I have finished stringing the other side. So I have 2 lengths of beaded sections that are, well, my wire is about 28 inches long on each side. I still haven't decided how I'm going to finish the end, but this is the really fun part. So let's go ahead and do the wired components that we need to make. So what I have here is a scrap of this Beadalon 20 gauge round medium temper German style wire. And this is, I believe this one is anti-tarnish, but I really like this wire. I tend to buy it over and over again. So I just have a little scrap of it because we don't need a lot. And what we're going to do is make one more of these components because I have 3 that have to be made before we can continue stringing. So I have the beads and the copper crystal rondelle spacer that I found at the Orlando Bead Show. I just love that color. So we're going to do simple loops on this one, as you can see on the one that's already done. So let me get some pliers here. And so we'll need my round nose pliers and chain nose pliers. So I am just going to give this wire a bend, and then I want to leave about 1/4 of an inch, you can see, and I'm just going to cut there. And now I'm going to take my round nose plier, start to roll it back, just rotate that plier and just get a simple loop. If I didn't get it good, I'll go back in, center it, and close it up. Okay, now just want to make sure it's nice and straight, and I'm going to string on one of those 6 millimeter, these check glass beads are gorgeous. I meant to say fire polished, but I got mesmerized by the beauty of these beads. Okay, that's the component, is 2 of those beads flanking a copper rondelle spacer. And then we're going to make a loop on this side. So right where that wire is exiting the bead, I want to go in the same direction, although if you don't notice, and there is a very easy fix for that. And I'm just going to give it a little bit of a bend, almost 90 degrees, not quite, and then just trim it, leaving myself about 1/4 of an inch, and then use the tip of my round nose pliers to roll that loop into place. And I didn't get them completely aligned, but that is not a problem. Just grab one loop with one plier, grab the other loop with another plier, and just align them. Just twist it so they are perfectly aligned. And while we're wrapping, I'm going to go ahead and do a wire wrapped loop on either end of this component. So just give you another look at the bead pattern that I created. Just I had 4 of these gorgeous lampwork beads, and I was just mesmerized by the copper glass that's shimmering around each one, even the cube bead. So I did an alternating sort of asymmetrical bead pattern and added some more of those check glass 6 millimeter beads, and just continuing my design pattern so it appears in my drops as well. So I have bent the wire on this end just so I won't lose my beads, and I'll show you how I do my wire wrapped loops. So I'm going to put my plier right where the wire is coming out of the top bead and give that a 90-degree bend, just like that. I tend to continually warm the wire with my fingers because it does make it easier to work with. And then I'm going to put my round nose pliers in at about the same. I want to copy this loop that I made earlier so I can show you that's about where it was on the pliers. So I'm going to try to do the same thing on this component. And I'm just going to bring that wire over the barrel of that round nose plier, rotate it so it's out of my way. I've just made my lady's little head, pulled her scarf to the side, and now I just want to make sure that that loop is centered on the wire. I like to do these as neat as possible. This little copper spacer wants to come off of this end. So I'm just going to grab the lady's head with my pliers, make sure my beads are out of the way, and I am going to wrap. Since this is such a long piece of scrap wire, I don't need my other plier. I can do it with my fingers. And I fit about 3 wraps on the other, and that's what I'm going to do on this one. And then I'm going to cut as close as I can to the bead, and then you absolutely need to tuck that tail in because you don't want anything that can scratch skin or damage clothing. And so that loop is done, and now we're going to create the bottom loop. So I think I told you what all of the supplies were in this drop that I created. I did have these flower spacers, and I don't have the information on them. They were in my supplies. If you are trying to duplicate this, it should not be too difficult to find some sort of a copper flower spacer. I have to straighten this wire a bit because it's when I made my loop on the other end. Now I was trying to design before I started the camera so that I wouldn't keep you here with my thought process, and so now I've got this a little bit crooked, but I think we'll be okay. That's the other thing with these lampwork beads. The holes, I don't know if you can see, the holes were not really smooth and they're not even either, so I needed a little bit of something, a spacer or something, to make that work for my loop. So I'm just going to do the same thing right where that spacer is. Give that a 90-degree bend. I can already see that I didn't bend it in the same direction as this side because I was having trouble here, but I will fix that as soon as I'm finished wrapping. And I'm going to repeat that same thing on this end. Do the 3 wraps. This one is shorter, so I am going to use my other plier to help me and save my fingers. 1, 2, 3. I just want to fill in that space. And I've talked to you in my other videos about the difference in a messy wrap and a nice neat wrap. So if you like the look of a messy wrap, then you won't have to pay attention to the placement of your wire as you're going down the core. I tend to neaten things up. I like the look of that, especially on a piece like this. Okay, I just need to straighten up my loops. I don't know if you can see how they're not exactly horizontal to each other, so I'm going to do that same little trick that we did with the simple loops and just tidy everything up. So now my drops are ready for me to decide how I'm going to finish the bottom of my necklace. I think they're so pretty. They make me happy. Those beads are just beautiful. So now the really fun part. I'm going to take my 2 stoppers off, and I am going to keep these together. I don't want to lose my beads that I've strung, and take one of my components and feed this wire through the simple loop on the left side of the component. And then, I know it's a little bit difficult to see because I'm holding on to everything, but then I'm going to take the simple loop on the other end of that component and feed my other wire through it. Let me get my fingers out of the way and I'll show you what we just did. So there we have it. We created a little bridge from one strand to the other strand. And now, if you're working with different size beads than what I'm showing here, the only thing you have to work out is how much space you want. Let's look at our sample. How much space you want in between your focal beads that are making the bridge. And that is really up to you. You're just creating a negative space there. So it can be a bit wider if you like the looks of that. It could be a bit tighter if you want less open space in between the beads. So I worked it out on this one to use the same copper seed beads that I started with. And again, just like my pattern where I'm working in groups of 6, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 beads on this side. And then I am going to take another component and thread one side onto this and just let it hang while I get the same amount of seed beads on this other strand. So since my necklace is a little bit long, I'm trying to hold it so that you can see, but as soon as I get these on, I'll lay it out so you can see where we're going and what it looks like at this point. Talking and counting, 6, yes, 6. Okay. Now I need to take the other side of this component and do the same thing. So this is our bridge on this side. And now you can see what we have. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. And I probably, if I'd had more of these beads, I probably would have done 5 on this. I really like the 5, but I liked all the beads matching, so that the bead mix only had 6 that were like this with that finish. So 6 more of those copper seed beads. And on the other one, I opted for a different pattern, but really it's just so that you really don't see the loops on your component or if on your bead. I wanted it to disappear so that it looks as if these are floating between the two strands. And I will just tell you that if you're new to making simple loops, or if it's just not your forte and you find that your simple loops are not always perfect, they're not always the right size, this is one necklace design that you can easily practice them because they don't show. Once you string it, as you will see here, I'll show it to you one more time after I get this last piece connected. You will see that you don't see the loops at all. They disappear. That's one thing about making long necklaces, though. Sometimes until you have it completely finished, it's a little hard to hold on to. But I think this is beautiful. Let me get in the camera and show you. I think this is absolutely beautiful. So you can see that I used the copper wire, I used copper seed beads, and so what I did is make the loops that I made pretty much disappear. They just sort of get lost in the string of seed beads. Now I absolutely, as I'm looking at this in the camera, I have just seen how beautifully that copper wire can just peek through the glass on these check glass faceted beads. That's just beautiful. So now how I'm going to finish is to continue with this pattern. So right there, I had one of these seed beads up here at the top, and I'm going to do the same thing on each strand. And do the same thing on the other side. And then I'm going to continue this pattern beneath this ladder that I just created until I have my desired length, and then I'll be right back with you and I'll show you how we're going to finish it off with the components that we made. I have finished stringing my necklace and now we are going to complete it. So I have made my final design decisions about my piece, and I did decide to go with this pretty magnetic clasp in copper with rhinestone encrusted flower, and it has a little black wash. So I took out just two of these very small 4mm jump rings, and I'm going to connect the clasp to the back of my necklace very simply. I decided to try this clasp. If I end up not liking it, I may go to the simple toggle. Magnetic clasps can be really wonderful, easy for on and off, but also they can be a pain. Sometimes they grab onto things you don't want them to grab onto. But since I have check glass running the entire length of this necklace and really very little metal findings, just those copper rondelle spacers, I decided to give this magnetic clasp a try. I wish I had a beautiful tiara cast clasp, but I did have a toggle one, but it was a little bit too large for this design, so I decided to go with this one. Okay, so my clasp is on. And now my design choice for the bottom, I did in the end choose the tassels. I just thought it was enough beads. So I've already connected one. I'm going to use this 6mm jump ring to go through the end of that wrapped loop that I made, and then connect it to the bottom. So I did this off camera. I used my magical crimpers and did my bottom loops and crimped it, but it is exactly the way I did the one at the top. Sorry, I am talking and looking in the camera and not paying attention to what I'm doing, but it's there. Okay, and so now on this one, I'm just going to do the exact same thing. Open this 4mm jump ring. I want to connect this copper tassel to the bottom of my lampwork bead component. Close that really well. And the last connection is a final 6mm jump ring through the wrapped loop that we did and through the loop that's done with the magical crimping tube. My battery is about to shut down. Always struggling with technology. But I am going to take some pictures on my mannequin with this and show you what it looks like. It's always difficult to see the beauty of things, especially a long necklace like this. But I am thrilled with the way it came out. It's lightweight, it's beautiful. It has the purple and copper color combination that I am crazy about. I think it is lovely. I'm really happy. And again, I made this for myself, so I'm just thrilled. I think it's a beautiful design. I'll put pictures of both of these at the end of the video. So hopefully you will have a lot of fun with this design. Make it your own. Choose beads you love that will be a focal for you. And just remember, when you're connecting it, if you make it a little bit longer, the way that I did mine, you will be able to look down and see your beads. So your beautiful special beads that are going to be floating between the two chains, you'll be able to see them as well as people looking at you. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this video, and I hope you'll be inspired to do something on your own like this. So I encourage you to have fun on your beading mats. Ciao, jewelry makers. See you in the next video.